I said good morning. That's much better. That's much better. That's my job for the next 15 minutes. Get you all energized. I had 3 cups of coffee. You should have 2 more. But really, honor and pleasure to welcome all of you to our summer seminar. You saw the title, First Movers, Shrinking Technology Gaps. Technology that will lead to abundant clean energy. And that abundant clean energy will lead to global prosperity. That's where we are. I want to set up with, you've been to many seminars, many conferences. This is different. So I want to point out the difference before I unpack what the seminar is going to be about. So the first difference, the work starts after the seminar ends. Work not just for EPRI, work for all of you. So you'll know what that work is. Second, you have opportunities to have Q&A. The biggest opportunity for discussion is tonight, with a glass of electrolyte and a glass of wine both together. So I'm going to point out in my setting the stage who to ask the questions. You're not going to ask the questions to me. 2 things to remember, 2 words that you can remember after the seminar. They'll do it. Just remember, let's go. Can you say that with me? Let's go? Let's go. So let's go and shape the future now. And we have to shape the future now because 12 months, 1 year, made a huge difference and made this transition really a transformation. And you see what happened in those 12 months. It happened in the US, but it is now impacting globally. The first 3, IIJA, IRA, you call it whatever you call it. Just last night, I was talking with Tom Kent, our vice chair from Nebraska Public Power. Somewhere there is Tom. And Tom is saying that's 1,000 megawatt aviation fuel, a clean aviation fuel plant that may come in Nebraska. You talk with Maria, you talk with anybody in Arizona, Georgia, they'll talk about all the chips plant and the battery plants. And then we, as humans, in November 2022, figured out we can create a brain. And that started what we are entering now, which is a thing that we really haven't seen in the last 30 years. There's a lot of misconception. Somebody says, Arshad, AI have been there for a long time. I said, yes, the AI that scans your eyes and then compares with 100 million pictures and says that's you. That has been there for years, decades. The AI that can mine thousands of data and pictures and figure out insightful things, that has been there. What hasn't been there is our desire to figure out how a neuron and synapse-type brain can be created in a digital way. That's different. We heard yesterday, Arshad, data centers have been there for a long time. What's new? I said, this is a different data center. This is not putting cat video and dog videos and baby videos. That was the phase 1. It is not going to cloud and IoT, which is still happening. That's phase 2. This is, once again, we are trying to create a brain, and we're trying to use the brain to make inferences. You can look at any one of those projections. Nobody knows what the load growth will be. So I'll say there are many people who you can talk with. Where's Pablo from Arcad? Pablo is somewhere. Raise your hand. Just ask Arcad. Arcad, how much froth is in the 60 gigawatt projection that you're going to bring Germany to Texas? When I say bring Germany to Texas, that is bringing a German-sized load to Texas in the next 6 years. One thing is for sure, though. There's a lot of uncertainties, how big the brain is going to be. How many people are going to be using the brain? How much more efficient chips and data centers? Well, chips and computation is going to be. All those, nobody knows. But one thing the hyperscalers know, if you have heard their last quarterly earnings call, that the risk of underinvesting is much, much greater than the risk of overinvesting. But we are utilities. We do a societal service. We cannot overinvest. So if you want to know how to invest and keep the ratepayers affordable, where is Tricia Pridemore, our commissioner from Georgia? Find out Tricia tonight and ask her what they're doing in terms of their tariff structures. So this AI race has quickly become what I call it's a race to power AI. And it's not just AI. I just mentioned the aviation fuel. I mentioned data centers. I mentioned chips. I mentioned PV plants. We are seeing load growth that we haven't seen in decades. And when we do that, we are doing this with the backdrop of the system was still changing and changing even more. You know, more than 10 years ago, Cal ISO came up with, well, there's a duck curve. Well, we have been cycling our thermal plant to catch the duck curve, but the duck will not return. The duck we coined last year has become a canyon. We use the PJM numbers on how steep the canyon wall is going to be, how deep the canyon is. You know, you don't need a tank of oxygen to dive into that canyon. You need a whole bunch of tank of electrons called batteries to dive into that canyon. We doubled the battery last year, 10 gigawatt. We're going to double it this year. By the time it's 2030, I don't know, there may be 150 gigawatt of batteries. This change was happening before AI or anything happened. And guess what? Both these changes were happening in the backdrop of the weather that we have today is not the weather of the past. The grid we have today is still the grid of the past. I can give you examples after examples. The last hurricane, Hurricane Beryl in Houston, you saw the impact. We, with the current projection, will reach 1 degree sea rise in 2035. That's not far away, that's 10 years away. A 1 degree C will increase 600% the land that will be susceptible to wildfire. A 1 degree C will increase 2 to 3 times number of extreme heat events. A 1 degree C will increase drought, will increase the number of months that you see the drought. This is happening. The grid that we have built needs to be rebuilt, strengthened for this, and the grid that we have to build will have to be built based on what we are seeing now. That's what our Climate Ready is doing, putting a framework on how you can build the grid of the future for the weather of the future. So with this backdrop of weather, with this backdrop of duck has gone to a canyon to swim, how do we power this new demand? And this is where we just have to be honest with each other. These are the tools in your toolbox. You got to build gas. You got to build transmission. You got to build wind, solar, batteries. You may build one more big nuclear, 2 more. I don't know. Joe is there. Maybe Chris Womack is somewhere there. Talk with them. This is the tool that you have in the toolbox, and there's a pile of coal there too. In regions where you have reliability challenge, you may be deferring the retirement that you thought you will retire. That's what you can do now. And that's what you will have to do. And as you do that, and as the globe does that, this is the biggest challenge you will face next year. It's not powering AI. It's not duck curve. It's not canyon curve. If you thought you had supply chain challenge, when all this noise becomes signal, and the signal becomes actual contract for transformers, for substations, for EHV, for cables, you will see a supply chain challenge that you have never seen before. And we are only 6, 9, 12 months from there. You got to figure out what you do. We talk about supply chain challenges every conference that I go to. When you point a finger at supply chain, there are 3 fingers pointing at you. What are you doing? Are you standardizing your specification, or one utility has 20 different distribution transformer specification? Are you figuring out how can you do life extension? So in case there's a supply chain, you may want to extend the life. Are you starting a discussion with your suppliers every day so that your queue is maintained? Because there's a graph there. And the graph shows the other industry that is going to also get into the queue is an industry that is much, much larger than our industry. It's a great partner. It's the high-tech industry. You will hear from them. But NVIDIA, that used to make video chips for my kids to play video games, their market cap is bigger than 100 utilities in US and Europe put together. That's one company called NVIDIA. And they can pay for the EHV transformer 5 times more than you can pay. So that is the near-term challenge that you have to figure out what you do. But if you are just building out the grid like you did in 1980, we have missed the opportunity. So when I said, let's go, I want to start with let's go flex and let's go gets. We cannot do it the old way. We cannot just do it the way we have done it. Yes, we have been doing load flexibility for a long time. But when duck curve came in, we had less than 10 gigawatt of solar. We have now more than 150 gigawatt of solar. How much load flexibility did we have in 2010? And how much load flexibility do we have now? I don't think we went up 18 times. And you know the value of load flexibility? Finally, we're figuring out what is the value of something outside of energy. Look at the PJM auction. Manu is right there in front of me. Manu is going to explain what $400 the Dominion and BG&E megawatt dash day. Only us knows what megawatt dash day means. I'll tell you what it means. It means a 5 kilowatt water heater has a capacity value that could be almost $400 a year. And you can ask somebody what a 500 megawatt of combined cycle running at 50%, is it a $50 million value or not? You go to Spain, they have more capacity than you need, but that capacity is nuclear. So last summer, not last summer, April, on a shoulder month, more than 50% of the energy price was ancillary service. Ancillary service cost value was higher than energy in Spain last April. In that system that we're going to, you got to double, quadruple load flexibility. We'll have to build transmission lines, no doubt about that. We'll have to build thousands of miles of transmission lines, but you already got 1,000. Why don't you take that 1,000 and operate some of your 230 to 345 kV? Yes, we want to do smart wires, smart controllers. We want to do dynamic line rating. All those are great, but do the things that we know how to do. Take a 230, go to 345. Take an AC, convert it to DC. There are ways we can increase the utilization of our existing. And just saying, Arshad, we have done all of those things, now we got to just build, that's not going to do it. So let's go means let's go flex, let's go gets. But going flex, going gets, and building like what we are building today is not going to get us clean, abundant energy, which is what we are here for. We need the first movers. You will see a lot of first movers here. You'll see them, they'll talk about first movers. You'll find out who is from Ontario Power Generation and ask them, hey, how is your SMR going on schedule, on budget? Because in this conference, we don't just do happy talk. We want to understand what's going on. You'll find out Raja from Alliant and say, hey, how is your Energy Dome 20-year, 10-megawatt long-duration energy storage is going on? But the first movers are critical. First movers ain't going to do it. In order for us to deploy technology, we got to go from first of a kind to nth of a kind. How many does it take to go from first of a kind to nth of a kind? That was actually a question. They gave you the answer. It takes around 10. We looked at how we did large nuclear power plants in the 70s, 80s. We looked at how we did environmental control, FGD, scrubbers. We looked at way back, how did we do large coal? You got to do 8 or 10. You do 8, 10, your body frees up. The system frees up. The supply chain starts coming. So we said, let's go. Let's go flex. Let's go gets. Gets, what's the next let's go? Let's go 10. Let's go 10. Let's do 10 of each of these in a systematic way. Do it with private-public partnership. Who's going to take the financial risk? Do it in a way so that we can figure out, not just keep everything confidential. That's not how we did large nuclear power plant. EPRI was engaged on the early stage. That's where the utilities requirements document, URD, came out. That's how the materials management program came out. We should be engaged. We can create the program. We don't influence policy. We are a bunch of technologists. But all of you guys can do that. My chair, Vince, told me, Arshad, $50 to $75 billion you have costed. You think you're going to get that money? I said, well, first, that's not my job. EEI, APPA, our partners, NRECA, and, NEI, you guys all figure it out. And yeah, $50, $75 billion, a lot of money. But transitioning to a clean energy future should be more important than watching NBA, for which NBC paid $80 billion. So you got to make a case on what is important. But you do this, you double down, triple down on flex, you double down and triple down on increasing your existing grid, and then you work with everybody to build what we have today. You got to build more gas. You got to keep some of the coals unretired. You got to build more transmission. You got to make sure you're doing that and you're keeping a check on affordability. That's why it's so important here that if you guys can come and listen to the first movers and help those first movers and us to go to the nth mover, do that this decade, So this decade, we will build in a smart way. That's it. The value of energy and the value of capacity and the value of ancillary service will be much more equitable. We will value ancillary service and capacity in an equitable way, both on wholesale and on retail. We're seeing that. It has to happen. We cannot jumble up everything as an energy cost. And when we do that, we come to the end of and we start what we will hear. What I'll say is, let's go to work. I will go to work tonight with a glass of electrolyzer. Sorry. I get very excited with the hype of hydrogen. So a glass of electrolyte on one hand and a sign-up paper on the other hand, and then I'll be signing up for Flex. I'll be signing up for Get. 10, you guys have to do that. I can't do that. You can sign with cash. You can sign by bringing a couple of big data centers to us, or you can sign by bringing a big transmission line that you will operate or put advanced conductors. So with that as our task, thank you again for giving us 2 days of very valuable time that you have given us. Thank you.